Adrian and I were just talking, we'll wait just a couple minutes for people to come in. I have some pictures to share with you before I start. I'll just leave this one open and then I'll tell you guys what we're doing here. This is going to be our hands-on facility, and Brandon and I just got back from there. I was there since 7 this morning, laying the floor down. We have some refrigerators already at the shop. We got three there, and we're having 3 or 4 more delivered. And we're still trying to get internet connected there. But this is going to be our facility, and I want to explain to you guys how it benefits you. Let me bring you another picture here. So here's the second picture. As you can see, we're setting up the classroom instruction part of it, where we have a board similar to the videos.
Sorry,
Yes.
I see the Google result from before.
I don't see a picture.
You don't see you didn't see any of the pictures? Okay, I
see the Google result from the vacuum.
Yeah, I realize what's happening. Give me a second. Is I put present screen, and it's not allowing me to like present part of my. I'm gonna say my entire screen here. Okay, I'm gonna share my whole screen right now. And someone's trying to come in, but I couldn't.
Now it's working.
I couldn't click on their name. I wonder if they left before I could get them in. Yeah, but it's showing the whole screen, like both sides, right? You're seeing 2 windows, and I don't want to show 2 windows.
Yes, it's split screen.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I got a new monitor, and the new monitor is like a 49-inch curved monitor. I thought it'd be easier for me to have separate windows open at the same time, but you know, I'll have to deal with it as today. Today it is what it is. So this is the classroom instruction. I just want to show you guys some of these other pictures. I got one more picture here. If I can get it to appear, and it's not appearing on top of my screen, and I don't know why. Come on. You know what? This screen here is in the way. Okay. So let me put it over here and bring this one back. So just to show you guys, this is our facility, Brandon and I. This is actually this morning how it looks. We have our first hands-on class coming up. Wednesday is the start date of this first hands-on class, and I want to tell you guys how it's going to benefit you. Here's the classroom area for those of you that just came in, and here's the other part of the warehouse. We laid floor down. I got air conditioning put in there. We're having refrigerators delivered today. Tools and equipment, we're unboxing, unpacking everything, making a list of what we have and what we need for Wednesday's class. So this is how we're going to benefit you guys with these Saturday classes as well. And also Fortuna's asked a question about those people are unable to actually come and attend one of these hands-on classes. How could they be a part of it? We still haven't got the internet set up. The guy was supposed to show up last week and didn't show up, so I could have my internet hooked up in the building. This is only 2 or 3 doors away from my business, and so we're going to tie off of my business as far as internet, and he was going to extend it for me, but he didn't show up. Like, trying to get people nowadays to do something is horrible. But anyways, our Saturday classes, Brandon's Friday night live streams, we're going to do from this facility. So instead of me teaching you a class sitting on a computer at a computer screen, we're actually going to take one of these refrigerators, and Brandon and I are going to be together where one of us will actually be demonstrating something, or working on something, and you could zoom in and watch the demonstration right on the product. So if we're talking about a vacuum pump and we're hooking it up, you guys could actually be live and ask questions while we are doing it. And we could show you different methods of servicing, how to take a compressor out, and so forth. And so with our hands-on training classes, like the one we got coming up this week, we're going to videotape parts of it and put it up there on the site. But we'll make it possible where if you cannot come and physically attend one of these classes in person, that you can attend the class virtually. So that is some of the things that we plan on doing with this facility. So this is just, again, we laid the floor down. We got refrigerators here. We got tables. The chairs we still haven't put in there yet. I'm trying to get the other pictures up too. This is the classroom instruction. Here's the active board like you've seen at my school. The projector's here. We set that up today. Computer's coming on Monday, so everything will be set up for you guys to be part of these classes. And instead of you just watching the video, we're going to actually do live classes. If I'm going to talk about a wiring diagram, I'm going to be up here on this active board, and Brandon's going to be behind the scenes filming it. So these are a lot of things coming up, and we're going to do some more things for our members, so that you guys can benefit from your membership even more as we expand this warehouse and get it put together. So before I get into the email that I sent on this KitchenAid refrigerator, we had a question about pulling a vacuum, and we were talking about some system here. One was these True Blue refrigerant hoses. Adrian, how much were these hoses?
To be honest, they cost a fortune. I think you can get one with all the necessary accessories in US, it's like $180.
Okay, is the hose a larger diameter?
It's inside diameter is 3/4.
Wow.
So this is very, very, very big. Like it's bigger than anything else. And because of that, anyway, there's videos explaining the science of it, but it allows you to speed up the vacuum process considerably. I mean, like a lot, because what they say is even if you have like a very large pump, your vacuum process is very much impeded by the diameter of the hoses that you use, especially if you go for the gauges. Whereas here it's like a direct line to your system, and because of the diameter, it speeds up the process considerably. They're very fast.
Okay, well let's talk two things about this. How are you accessing the refrigerant system? By what type of valve are you connecting to the system?
Okay, so they use regular, you're supposed to use, actually the price that I mentioned includes a core removal tool.
Yeah, I see it right here. There's a core removal tool.
Are you familiar?
There's a core removal tool in this picture here.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah,
so that core removal.
But are you using?
You've got your valve, right?
Yeah, but what kind? Let me rephrase the question.
Yes, sir.
What are you attaching to the refrigerant system that you can connect these hoses to? Are you using a bullet valve? Are you using locking pliers with the access valves on it? What are you connecting to the refrigerant system when you're doing your recovery?
It's up to you. I mean, using a piercing valve like pliers or those piercing valves, I mean, it doesn't make sense because you use that only in the beginning to make the diagnostics, right?
Yeah. So
and you're not pulling a vacuum for that. That would be very difficult. But later on, when you solder on the Schrader valve or the valve that comes on the dryer, you can use that.
Okay.
You know.
well, here's
because that's when you pull the vacuum.
all right. So this is let me see. Let me just do it. And this is what I wanted to say. These stem valves here, you're only talking about a 1/4 inch diameter tube. And I know that your hoses are, like you said, they're 3/4 of an inch or a 1/2 inch diameter. You're restricted through this 1/4 inch tube. You're only going to get so much out of that tube at a certain rate. So if your hoses are equivalent to the 1/4 inch or a little bit larger, going to a 3/4 inch is really not going to make much difference. Remember, we're talking in refrigerators, we're only talking about 3 or 4 ounces of refrigerant in liquid form. Maybe 5 or 6 on some of these bigger ones. But having the bigger hose really isn't going to make a huge difference. Maybe you feel like it's going that way, but after it comes out, it's going to drop into a deep vacuum, but inside your system is not going to evacuate as fast as the other side. Because if I took this valve here, let me just see if I can get an image and just sort of like give you an idea what I'm talking about. Let me just copy this image, and I want to bring it in. Guys, we'll talk about this refrigerant problem in a minute, but we had a question here. If I, let me see, why can't I expand this? If I had this piece here and I take a 3/4 inch pipe here, or your 3/4 inch hose here, which is, let's say, that much bigger than this, you're going to have a real deep vacuum after it comes out of the valve. But remember, we can only get so much through here, just like a traffic accident. When you got 4 lanes of highway down to 1, the other side is lower and looks like it's deeper, but you can only pull so much through here, so it's still going to restrict how fast you do it. Those hoses are a bit better on refrigeration systems because they have such higher volumes refrigerant. So it is going to speed up recovery drastically on systems that have large volumes of refrigerant. If I were you, I would not buy any more of those blue hoses, because you're really, even if you went from 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch hose, there's only so much that's going to come out of here. Even if you remove your Schrader, there's only so much that's going to come out of this hose. The hose is this big, and it's only going to come out of an opening that small. So the other thing was,
I understand what you're saying totally. That would, yeah.
Go ahead. What are you going to say?
I had the same concern, so I did research on that, and apparently it does make a difference somehow. There's some science behind it, like friction inside the hoses and stuff. And keep in mind, those hoses are not meant for recovery. Absolutely, you would contaminate them, so they're only for vacuum. And the AC system, they have the same access port, 1/4 inch, and they swear by them. All the people that I don't endorse them. I don't want anybody to buy them just because I said they're great. I'm still experimenting. So I'm gonna do some experiments. I'm gonna share my results. I'm gonna use a regular hose versus one of those, and I'll share with you guys what I find.
I think though also is the shorter the hose to the system, the easier it is to pull a vacuum. Some people have 6-foot long hoses, and that really causes the vacuum to struggle. So you don't want hoses more than, if you can get a 1-foot-long hose or 2-foot-long hose, you're going to get a better vacuum than if you have a 3, 4, or 5-foot hose. And I did a video a long time ago. I don't know if any of you saw it or you remember it. I had some hoses from some refrigerant systems, and I was showing the rubber seal inside of these hoses that sometimes people solder on a valve and they screw on the hose real quick before that valve cools down, and they melt the gaskets. And that really affects how deep of a vacuum you can get. So the other question you had was about pulling down the vacuum from one side versus both sides. And if you have the ability to pull a vacuum from both sides of the system, always do it that way. Because pulling a vacuum down from a system from one side, like the low side, the capillary tube and everything is going to restrict how fast you can pull from the high side. And it's going to take forever to get the whole system down. Your vacuum gauge is going to start pulling down, and as soon as you close your gauges off, you're going to see the vacuum gauge go back up again as the pressures inside equalize. So accessing the
That's what I've been getting from pulling from the low side.
Yeah, so you definitely have to pull from both sides to make sure you get an even vacuum if you can. Now there'll be some instances you don't, but you always have to make sure that you do it. Using a micron gauge is very important. The one other thing I wanted to say before we go into the problem was that I also brought up this vacuum pump. If any of you wanted to know, Adrian purchased this Navac. Let me see if I can get some images of it directly. This is actually a cordless vacuum pump that runs off of a battery. It looks like a 18 volt battery, and you could just use this here for pulling a vacuum on the system. The only drawback is I read real quickly that it only pulls about 20 to 50 microns. So, you know, you always hear 500 microns, 500 microns. Do you have to get to 500 microns? I don't think it's 100% important that you get 500 every time, but you get as close as you can. They say if you're only getting 50 microns, you might leave moisture in your system. And that could cause problems in the future. Now, your dryer filter may pick up a majority of it and you'll be okay. But you do have to remember, the deeper the vacuum, the less non-condensables you're going to have in your system when you are pulling a vacuum. So, anybody got any questions about that?
Sorry, sir, may I comment? It's yeah, but you're saying 520, but like 20 is when you're talking vacuum, it's net superior to 500, so it's like way below what you would need, right? So yeah. 20 is a very good vacuum to have pulled. Well, and it's not.
I've pulled vacuums with a vacuum pump and reached 20 microns within less than 2 or 3 minutes. You know what I mean? That back in the days when we were doing refrigeration, and Andre, I'll give you a chance to speak in a second. When we were doing refrigeration systems back in the 80s, you know, we didn't have micron gauges. So we always thought, let it run 20 minutes or 25 minutes and you're good to go. If it holds a vacuum, let's go. So again, at 2 CFM, that's how fast it's going to pull down, not how deep. But what you really want to have is not necessarily the CFM, because you can get a 5 or 6 CFM, it's going to pull down faster. What you really want to look for in your vacuum pumps is when they say single stage or 2-stage vacuum pump. Andre, you want to ask your question before you forget, and then I'll explain the vacuum pumps?
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what do you recommend your technicians as far as pulling on the vacuum to?
Well, we want to pull 500 microns, but like I said, the CFMs, and for those of you who are not familiar, CFM is how many cubic feet per minute it can pull down.
Per minute.
So that pump was a 2 CFM pump. I have a 6 CFM pump. So I'm going to pull down 3 times faster than a 2 CFM. Now, I'm not knocking the pump. And I understand why Adrian got it, and there's nothing wrong with that. But a 2-stage pump versus a single-stage pump is very important, because what happens, a pump, imagine like a piston pulling down, right? My hand dry is terrible. So you got a piston here, and you got a valve that's allowing the air, the non-condensed supposed to come in, and then when the piston goes back up, it pushes out another valve over here. Okay, so here's your two valves. But whenever this valve closes, some of it seeps back. Okay, a pump isn't perfect. It always leaves a little bit behind, just like a water pump in a washing machine. You turn the water pump in a washing machine on, it pumps the water out, and then when you go take the hose off, water comes out. So a two-stage would actually have more than one of these pistons, and it would pump into a secondary chamber so that it will pull down whatever this lacks. This one will get it even deeper. So a two-stage pump is always better than a single-stage pump because it's almost like two pumps in one. Okay? So if we can get 500 microns, that's what we need to achieve. If we get 3, 4, you're okay. I know LG, I've talked to them a couple of times, and you know those linear compressors, those compressors fail a lot. And I've had customers, or not customers, but tech lines say, oh yeah, did you pull a 500 micron? I had 300 or 400 micron. No. If you don't get a 500 micron, don't call us because the system won't work right if you don't pull a 500 micron. So that's the manufacturer telling you that.
That's not true because I've done it before in LG. Pulled the 700 and I was perfectly fine.
Well, no, 700 is a better.
Maybe I got lucky though.
700 is better than a 500 micron. I'm sorry, no, 700 is worse. I'm sorry, I got it backwards. The higher the number, less the vacuum. Yeah, but you know what happened was one of my guys changed a compressor on an LG, and then he went back and the compressor failed or the system failed. And the point being is that they're saying if you didn't get a 500 micron, you know, that's why your system failed. I don't think you have to get a 500 micron vacuum in order to have a perfect system. You can get a 700, you'd be good.
I have a question, Mr. Zilka, sir,
Go ahead.
about vacuum. So I know about 500 or 700. I'm fine with that. My question, my concern lies in once you turn the pump off, right? You immediately start to see the pressure rising. I've never seen one that it would just stay there. And I believe they say that it's supposed to rise, but it's the rate of the rise that matters.
Okay.
So what would be like eventually?
Where are you connecting your micron gauge? Where in the system?
Micron gauge is on the valve removal tool. It's on all the time.
It's on the valve.
That's a bad place to put it.
Yeah, are you saying it's on the actual access valve?
No, the core removal tool. The core removal tool has an extra access port on it.
No, and Andre's right. I would not do that. What I would do is let me just do this real quick. I can use these symbols here. Let's say these are my gauges, okay? And this here are my 3 hoses. 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so the one on the left, I'm just gonna fill it with color so we know like low side and high side. So this is my low side, and here's my high side, right? So now what I want is I want to hook my blue hose directly to the refrigerator. Okay, I want to hook my red hose directly to the refrigerator. So these 2 hoses are the high side. My handwriting is terrible, but my high side and my low side, okay? So what I made, and you can buy this, is you can get a T right here. And it's like a flare fitting around the end here that screws onto the valve. And I'm telling you, let me draw just a little bit better because my handwriting, my drawing's terrible. I don't have my pen connected. I'm waiting for my new computer. Okay, so the T would look like this. You'd have a piece here and a T fitting here. And what I do is I actually have a manual shutoff valve right here. I'll hook up a shutoff valve to this unit right here. Okay, so there's a valve there, and this would go to my micron gauge. Okay, so this is my micron gauge. 000. Oh, let's just say that's my reading, 500. Okay, and then this goes to the refrigerant system. So while I'm pulling a vacuum, well, actually no, this is I'm sorry. I switched.
This is your vacuum.
Yeah, I switched. My vacuum pump is on the hose, on the shutoff here. The micron gauge is here. The micron gauge is here, and my vacuum pump is here. I'm sorry, this wasn't what I planned to talk about, so I wasn't prepared for it. So this is where my vacuum pump is, okay? And then when I reach 500 microns, I shut this off here. Now my micron gauge is still connected to my refrigerant system. But I'm pulling my vacuum here. Now you don't want to be right next to the pump. You usually have like a 2 or 3 foot hose. 3 foot hose from here to here. But I pull my microns through this T fitting, and then if I want, I shut off these gauges here and here when I'm done with my vacuum. I let's say I pulled a vacuum, got 500. I shut off the T. I watch to see if my numbers rise, making sure my hoses are good. And if my numbers don't rise or they rise very little, I close these gauges off here, isolating the refrigerator. And then what I do is I take my Freon and put my Freon here. I take this, I disconnect my micron gauge here, and see this is why the class area will be better, so I can show you. And I'll take and put my Freon here. And then what I do is I turn the vacuum pump back on and I pull vacuum out of all these hoses, and including the gauges. So when I open up my Freon tank, I have no air in my lines. So I have this T fitting here, and I use that vacuum and the T fitting to pull my vacuums and everything. But when I shut it off here and I go to charge, Freon doesn't go back out my pump area. Does that make sense?
Yes, sure.
Yeah, it does, but I would just get a 4-port gauge to defeat all of that.
Yeah, well, I only had 3-port gauges at my school, and the micron gauge actually came with the T fitting in the package.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
You never seen them with it? Let me see something here.
Yeah.
I just typed Google and it did not go to Google. Did you see that?
What brand of micron gauge do you use, by the way?
I forgot the brand, bro. I have like 3 different types at the school. But some of these, I think this is what I got, field piece. This is what I have. So if we look at field piece, let me see if they show you the picture with the parts breakdown. This comes with the T fitting here. You see the T fitting in the picture? I'll zoom in on it.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
So this is the one
I've
I
used
have.
that in the past. That brand, field piece brand.
Yeah.
No. I was just gonna say I've used that setup in the past when I was doing air conditioning, and it never worked out for me. So that's why I had to buy the 4-port, and I bought a Yellow Jacket brand micron gauge. And ever since I was using that, never had a problem getting the vacuum done. This is my opinion. Yeah.
Well, you could have had a bad hose, or even inside the micron gauge, there's a seal in there, and believe it or not, these micron gauges, they work off of thermistors when they pull a vacuum. And if they get dirty or oil in them, it messes up the accuracy of the micron gauge. And sometimes cleaning that thermistor up inside here where you connect them, you use a dry alcohol that'll evaporate and a small Q-tip and clean them out a little bit. Make sure there's no oil or refrigerant debris. I mean, refrigerant will normally evaporate anyways, but make sure there's no oil or dirt inside there, because if so, it affects the operation of your micron gauge. So if you had one and it got oil in there or something, it could have affected how it operates.
I've tried that with the alcohol swab. It never worked. It never worked for me.
Okay. So anyways, I sent you guys the email with a KitchenAid built-in refrigerator. Any of you know Miss Ward, she from time to time reaches out to me and asks me questions about things. And I thought it was very interesting, the problem. So I wanted to share you guys this. So I clicked it once and it switched 2 pages. So what do you see in this picture?
Is it a frozen return, like in a overcharge scenario?
Yes, the suction line is frozen, and most likely with a frozen suction line, you could probably think that someone might have overcharged the unit. Let me show you these other pictures real quick, and then get to the meat of the matter. That's a little closer up shot of it, and that's a further away shot. So this was a built-in unit where the compressor's on the top. Let's. What type of questions should you ask the customer before seeing that ice that you saw? When customer calls you out and says, "Hey, my refrigerator's not cooling right," what type of question should you ask the customer?
Do you hear the fan motor running?
Okay, is the fan motor running? Anything else?
Do you hear the compressor humming?
Okay. Now, remember, some of these customers are clueless. We use the words compressor and fan motor all the time, and we take for granted that we're talking to people in the same trade, so you know what I'm talking about. But someone that's not in this trade, and you ask a customer, "Do you hear the compressor running?" The customer's like, "What's a compressor?" You know, they have no clue what you're talking about. So I think one of the key questions is first of all, you want to say something, Trinity, before I go?
Yes. If they got most of the time, if I'm dealing with a refrigerator that's got a freezer on it and it's not cooling or not cooling properly, the first thing I ask them, do they have any ice cream in the freezer? Is it getting soft?
Okay, that's
So I knew that.
That's
That's
a
something
good question.
that they can relate to.
Yeah, that's good, because remember, ice freezes at 32 degrees. Ice cream at 18 degrees is a little soft and melty. It's not as hard. At 0 to 10 degrees, you're going to bend your spoon trying to knock it out. So in most units, the freezer cools the fridge. Now, a lot of these newer ones now with dual evaps and everything, that goes out the wayside. But asking the customer what side is cooling and what makes you think that it's not cooling properly. If the refrigerator side's not cooling properly, the water in the door is going to be warmer. Ice is not going to be made properly if we have a freezer side problem. If they say, well, both sides are not cooling well, that's good. Do you want to ask if she's ever had service done to her refrigerator before? What if someone did do a sealed system job on this unit where you saw the ice that I showed you? What if someone did do a job on this unit, overcharged it? It will work good for a while, but maybe that evaporator's, if that suction line's frozen, that evaporator's frozen. Okay? So when you get there now, after you asked your customer their question, so what was cooling, where it's cooling, if they saw or heard things running, how do you begin? What's the first thing you do? Besides get the model and serial number off the unit. That's the first thing you should do. Go ahead, Jonas.
You can check the temperature of the freezer or the refrigerator, sorry,
Okay.
with the gun.
Okay. Do you know that the gun only checks the
I
temperature of
asked
the
them.
wall? Go ahead. Go
Do you
ahead.
mean like during the phone call?
No, you're at the house now. You asked
Or
them
on
the
site?
questions. Now you're at the house.
Oh, okay. Yeah, then also IR gun and ask, check the noises, the fans without opening it. Try to hear the fans running, the compressor running.
Yeah, before you take any panels off, you want to see what's working. I had one student that I said, oh, this refrigerator does this and that. Oh, I put my gauges on it. What if you do this? Oh, I put my gauges on it. I said, no. Don't always go to put your gauges on the system. Look to see what's working and what's not working. Okay, so you want to go and you want to check the evaporator fans running, the compressors running, the condenser fans running, those three main parts. Do you know that those three always are on or off at the same time together? You're always going to have the condenser and evaporator fan running. The evaporator fan's not going to shut off and the compressor's going to continue to run. The condenser fan's not going to shut off and the fan in the freezer is going to continue to run. They almost always go on and off together, whether it's a mechanical thermostat or a computer controlled unit. But you want to make sure these three components are working. Because if the evaporator fan fails, what will happen in the freezer section?
It's going to build force on the car.
Okay, so we're going to have
That back wall's gonna be.
Ice up.
Yeah, it's going to ice up. So the customer's going to have a cooling issue, but your back's going to freeze up. So if the fan stopped working, do you think this ice could happen also if the fan stopped working?
It's possible.
Yes.
Yes, it's possible, but to be honest with you, not that likely. And the reason why I said is because the refrigerator, even if the fan motor fails to work, what happens when the fan motor stops working is we stop pulling heat across that evaporator coil. Yes, it'll build up excessive ice, but we still have a defrost cycle that will come on and melt the ice off the tubing. And if the fan fails, it should not continue to build up ice and continue to build up ice and never defrost the ice off the unit. So we could have a bad fan problem, but I want to go back to this first picture because I'm still holding back something that I haven't shown you guys yet. What else do you see there? I'm reaching here. This is not like a cut and dry answer, but what else do you see here? Do you see anything? There's two things that I'm looking for here.
I see two lines. But I see two lines frozen.
Yeah, well that line that you see frozen here is just going up and over and around and in. So it's really all just the one line. But one of the things.
Oh, okay.
Anybody else want to add anything to it? Okay. How about this braze joint? Does this look like a technician changed this compressor, or does that look factory?
I don't know. Looks factory.
Seems like it has been changed.
It looks factory.
Seems factory.
Yeah, it looks factory. But the other thing is look here on the compressor. What do you see right here?
Is it dirty?
No, it's somebody worked with a torch maybe.
No, it's dirty. Because let me show you the condenser.
Oh, it's dirt.
I like I said, I was holding back a picture. That's a condenser.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
Ouch.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Again,
It's
remember
the insulation edition.
the attic edition. Now let me ask you guys a question. Um, would all this dirt cause that problem on the evaporator?
It would cause not it would impede the refrigerant from
It,
condensing properly, I guess.
it
Yes.
would affect the working condition of the refrigerator where it's not cooling
The heat can't be
outside.
removed.
Say
Yeah, when
that
it pulls
again.
heat from the food, it won't be able to go anywhere.
Yeah. So, well, here's the thing. The coil itself, the condenser coil being this dirty, is going to cause other problems. It's not going to cause the icing problem. So the customer may have had a cooling issue, but may have had it in a very cool house, so that made up for the dust on the condenser coil. Um, if their coil's that dirty, just imagine the house probably is that dirty too. But that coil being that way will cause other problems. I'm going to ask you that in a minute. So going back to this ice problem, because we really haven't come down to the answer on the ice problem, it's probably a defrosting problem. That the unit hasn't defrosted, and as the ice builds up on the evaporator, we have less evaporation of refrigerant, so it starts evaporating on the suction line. So this is probably an indication of a frosted up evaporator. I want to give you an analogy of something I had on a central air. I remember working for a company, and I did some central air, but at the time I was, I'm mainly an appliance guy. I know how to work on air conditioning and everything. And the guy says, "Hey, listen, I got a buddy of mine. Can you go over? You got an R22 on your truck?" And I said, "Yeah." "Can you go over to their house? Their AC's not cooling. It's right around the corner from where you're at." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, yeah. I'll go run over and check it out." So I go over there and they're saying, "Yeah, the house is hot." I go put my gauges on there. And an R22 system, the low side's about 65, 67 PSI. I was getting like a 50 or 48, something like that. Like the low side pressure was low. So I got my Freon and I started adding Freon. I says, well, maybe they have a leak and let me add Freon. And I kept adding Freon. I could never really get the pressures to go up. I never looked at the evaporator. And I overcharged the unit. Because the evaporator was so dirty in the house, we weren't getting airflow, so it was freezing up. And as it froze up, it lowered the temperature of the coil and the pressure because I wasn't pulling any heat across it with the ice. And that's why I was overcharging the unit. But I never thought to look at the evaporator. Again, I did at that time, and we're talking about like 1990 something. I didn't do a lot of AC, so I didn't physically check the coils and see what's happening on the coils. But when you see ice like this, if nobody did any work on it, and it's iced up, if that's iced up, your evaporator's probably iced up, and that would not be caused from a bad fan motor. The only thing that would cause this are two main things. The unit's not defrosting or it's overcharged. A bad fan motor will cause some icing of an evaporator, but probably not involve. Why does this say my extend the call? Hold on, I'm sorry guys. I'm getting a message that my workspace is going to. I hope it doesn't disconnect like I did last time in the class. But anyways, ice like that, you want to look at the evaporator. First thing I want to do is check the defrost cycle. But seeing all that dust on this condenser, on this compressor, and then seeing the picture of this condenser, what problem is going to happen from this dirty condenser?
It's gonna cool worse, less cooling, because some of the
High head
refrigerant
pressure.
is going to be vapor when it enters the evaporator.
You're gonna have a high head pressure.
Okay, right, Jonas, DW, high head pressure because it's not releasing heat. So it's going to create excessive temperatures in the condenser, which is going to raise your pressures. And in that case, that's going to affect the cooling of the fridge, but it's going to cause a bigger problem. What's going to happen within the system?
Well, the de-superheating process won't happen, right? So it's not going to fully turn back to a liquid.
It's gonna work harder. The compressor probably overheated.
Yeah.
Too much strain on the compressor. I agree with Trinity.
Now, all three of you are right. When it gets that hot, the compressor is working against a higher head pressure. Okay? We're not evaporating the refrigerant. We're getting liquid refrigerant back into our compressor from the no defrost. That's what that frozen suction line is. And if the compressor's working higher head pressure, your compressor's running hot, and it's going to start picking up some oil and pull that oil into your condenser and possibly start causing a restriction. So not only are you going to have problems with cooling, you're going to have problems with the sealed system and oil flowing around. Yes, Jones?
Your input is gonna go up as well.
The what's going to go up?
Your input of the compressor.
Oh, yeah.
The amp of the compressor will go up.
And then we're sucking in liquid into the suction line, so we're going to damage our valves and damage our compressor. So this job right here, built-in refrigerator, how much do you think you could charge for a job like this?
To do what exactly, sir?
Well, I assume we got a defrost problem.
Go, Andre.
Well, I assume we have a defrost problem, so we got to defrost it, troubleshoot the defrost problem. We have to clean the condenser and make sure that we can get the pressures the way we wanted them to be. I don't think we have a sealed system problem here. So, roughly, what do you think the cost is for cleaning the coils, defrosting the evaporator, and let's just say it's a bad defrost by metal?
Roughly, I would say with the service call and cleaning everything, about 500, 550.
I'm thinking 650.
Yeah.
You guys are all in the ballpark.
Yeah. 5 to 7.
I say
I would say like-
But that's Canadian for me, keep in mind.
Yeah, you guys are all in the ballpark of the pricing of this job, but one thing is take your time and clean everything. I mean, even go back to this unit and clean this. Clean the condenser, clean the lines, clean the whole inside compartment that you can get to. And, you're going to charge a pretty penny, but also make the customer satisfied that, look, I cleaned it like it was almost a brand new unit inside. So that is pretty much what we're going to run into on a defrost problem. The condenser was not the problem with the icing, but this is all the same refrigerator. So that's a good job and a good money-making job right there. If the board was bad, it would be even higher. I'd even say it's 700. Are you guys still there? The hell?